And we are live. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday, the week before Thanksgiving. And so everyone's running around like a chicken with their head cut off. And so I thought I would have fun talking to you all about more things that make you around like a chicken with your head cut off, including trust account issues. So I have a fantastic guest today, Tiffany Keefer, who is an accountant. Don't hold that against her, and a former Supreme Court Office of Attorney Ethics auditor. And she specializes in IOLTAs. So we're going to talk about compliance and fun things like that, and the things that get lawyers in trouble sometimes. So, Tiffany, welcome to the Rebel Roundtable.
Thanks for having me, Jen. I'm so excited to be here.
You're like, I'm so excited to talk about trust account issues. Um, Give us a little bit of background of where you've been, where you are, what you're doing.
So I'm an accountant by trade. Right out of college, I went to work for the state of New Jersey, and I spent most of my career with the Office of Attorney Ethics for the New Jersey Supreme Court. I was a random compliance auditor for many years, and I was also a disciplinary auditor, investigator, handling ethics grievances, financial matters, things like that. I left almost 4 years ago. I was getting asked a lot by attorneys if I could help them, and a lot of attorneys needed guidance. So it's been about almost 4 years that I left. And so now I do accounting for attorneys. I get very involved in the grievance processes. If attorneys have random audits, they just are not in compliance. They need consultations to see if their IELTS account's good. They just need some training. So anything trust account related, that's my area of specialty.
And are you any kind of state restrictions? Do you work in any state? I know you have some specialty in California these days with what's going
I
on.
do. I just got back from San Francisco, actually. Yes. No, I actually have clients in many states. I have clients in North Carolina, a lot in the New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York area, several clients in California, Georgia. So, yeah, trust accounting is trust accounting.
Well, and it's interesting because each state has different ways that they monitor and track and do things. And I think that's the big hubbub in California is all these random trust audits that are now coming down that in the past it seemed like the audits were based on like if you overdrew your trust account, that would trigger something, or if someone complained. But then we find out that someone had lots of complaints against them and no investigations were ever done. And so that's caused this whole reaction to these random trust account audits these days.
Yes.
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 So, as an auditor, when you were looking at these things, what do lawyers think they're doing right, but they absolutely are not doing right usually?
So usually in my experience, attorneys think they're keeping the records that they need to keep. And they always think that they're reconciling properly. They always say, I've never taken anybody's money. And as long as I know I've never done that, I'm in compliance. But in my experience, the majority of the time, attorneys do not have all the records. There's usually some kind of deficiencies. It's usually not intentional. It usually comes down to they don't necessarily understand the accounting side. I would say attorneys are not the best accountants, and they usually will agree.
I'm
Um,
shocked. I'm so shocked to hear that.
and so they often don't rely on a person that really has that expertise. So they either try to do it themselves while they're trying to do their HR and be a lawyer and run their show and do everything they need to do.
Mhm.
And they don't have the time to invest in it, or they don't have the right person working on it. And sometimes they're paying CPAs or bookkeepers or accountants that say they have trust experience, but they really don't. And a lot of times attorneys don't realize that it's not being done the right way until something happens down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard too to go back and try to recreate or find the things that you need if you weren't keeping track of them as you went
Yes.
along. So recreating.
Yes.
You do that, right? You help people come in and clean up what they have.
Absolutely. I do that every day. Yes, yes. Yeah. I always say the best is when you're being proactive. I have calls all the time where people say, I just don't think I'm in compliance and I just don't think that I'm doing it the right way. Could you help me? Could you do an internal audit? Could you get me on the right track?
Yeah.
But a lot of people wait until there's a situation where they're forced to do it, where they have an audit or they have an investigation or a grievance. Sometimes, with fraud anymore, there's so many times now where somebody's trust account
Yeah.
is a product of fraud and the court comes in to look and it has nothing to do with how they've been maintaining the records, but now they're under that microscope for a 2-year period or further. And so
Yeah.
sometimes people think, oh, well, my state doesn't have a random audit program. I'm not, nobody's ever going to come looking, but it's, it does happen.
Hmm. What are like some of the top one or two trust accounting mistakes other than having documentation? What are they doing with the actual accounting themselves?
I would say a lot of attorneys are not doing proper three-way reconciliations.
Okay.
I think a lot of attorneys do a regular bank reconciliation that you would do
Mm-hmm.
for any business. A lot of them do not do the three-way reconciliation. They don't really even understand it. And without doing that, a lot of times there is like a shortage or they've over dispersed, which is a negligent misappropriation, which is, will get you disciplined.
Yeah.
But what also happens is a lot of times they've left their fees in there and don't realize they haven't taken them out, and that's commingling, which is a big thing in every state.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's unidentified money that gets left in there then, and then they have to try to figure out how to escheat it to the state, which can be actually a very pricey experience in certain states like Texas. Actually find you if you don't report things timely. And so some states it's very difficult to get that money over. And the longer you have money sitting in there that you can't get back to a client, the harder it is.
Yeah.
So by not doing the reconciliation, it can lead to a lot of issues.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the three-way you don't have to give like a whole CLE on it, but what do you mean by three-way rec?
So a three-way reconciliation is really reconciling what your books say, whether it's your QuickBooks, it's your Excel, it's your checkbook register, what your books say you have at the end of the month,
Mhm.
what your bank says you have at the end of the month, and then listing out whose client's money you're holding at the end of the month. And all three of those need to tie into the penny.
Okay.
And if they don't reconcile. But if you're doing it every month and they don't, banks transpose numbers, humans make mistakes. You find it at the end of the month and you're able to fix it right away as opposed to finding it several years later.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we think about bank reconciliation, that's what we're going through, and we're just checking the boxes that
Yes.
matches, but we don't do the third step there. So
Yes. Yeah, and things happen like people put duplicate entries in, not realizing it, or you write a number wrong, or you write a check in your checkbook, your QuickBooks, and then you void the checkout but don't record it. And so sometimes it's just bookkeeping or accounting errors. But sometimes you actually, can disperse money thinking you're holding a certain amount for a client, you really aren't. And because you haven't done that reconciliation, you have that issue, but there's also sometimes a disconnect with billing software. Like I see a lot of times when attorneys come to me, they're using, whether it's a Clio or Lawmatics or whatever they're using, and they're relying on that system to maintain their client balances, which is fine. But when you're not tying it into your financial system or your checkbook,
Mhm.
there's often a disconnect, and
Yep.
people don't realize that they can't just rely on two separate systems to do one task. Because your billing software is going to include any AR that you have if you send an invoice out where you need to tie into the cash that's actually sitting in the bank.
Mhm.
Sometimes people think because they're using a billing software and they can run a report that they're good, but 99% of the time they don't tie in if you're not doing it the right way.
Okay.
So
Are there systems or technology or tools that you recommend attorneys at least consider when it comes to trust accounting?
So I would say almost every state that I've come across has some kind of manual on their state bar, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
give you some kind of training. California, I will say, is very good with the training they put out with their new CTAP program. But you can keep stuff manually.
Mhm.
I would say attorneys that have been practicing a long time tend to do more manual record keeping. They don't trust technology as much as the younger
Understatement of
generation.
the year, but yes.
You can use Excel, but there's programs out there like a QuickBooks. My preference is QuickBooks. There's things like Cosmolex, things like that, that will do everything for you. And that will produce all the records that you're required under the RPCs, as long as the information is put in correctly.
Okay.
So there's not a right or wrong way to do it. Just some ways just take a little bit longer if they're manual.
Okay. I was just curious because sometimes like I go overboard with technology sometimes. Not overboard. I try to find the right technology and the right systems for things, but it's often hard to get things moved over when someone has been doing something for so long one
Yes.
way, and then trying to introduce a new way is often difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not just a trust accounting issue, it's an overall issue. But yeah. If someone realizes they've messed up, because I've talked to a few lawyers like this in the past 15 years where they're like, I don't think I'm in compliance. I've messed up, or I've got this random audit. What should they do first besides panicking and crying?
Well, what I would say is, obviously if they've gotten the letter, they're going to panic. That's just
Yeah.
the nature of it. I mean, I will say that this is probably one of the most stressful times for an attorney.
Mhm.
Even when I tell them they don't have anything to panic about, they usually do, and they lose sleep, and it's expensive if they are not in compliance. And I understand that.
Mhm.
But I would say if they know they're not in compliance and they haven't gotten a letter yet, and they're just like, I just have a feeling like all these things you're saying, or when they take a, a
Mhm.
CLE class, I usually often get people that say, I'm asking for a friend. But I can tell, that it's that,
Asking
people
for a
really
friend.
have questions for themselves. Is to deal with it now and don't say I'm going to wait till January, I'm going to wait till June or when I'm not busy, because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be. And, I would say don't put your head in the sand. It's not a difficult thing to fix. And it's not a difficult thing to learn how to be in compliance once you educate yourself.
Yeah.
So if you know that you're not in compliance, or you think, you know what, there's probably a better way of doing this or an easier way of doing this, or, I know it's not right, reach out to somebody that is an expert in this area, somebody that can help you
Right.
and teach you. And something attorneys need to remember is that ultimately they need to be responsible. They should always understand, even if somebody else is doing it for them, even for my clients that I do the work all the time. I say to them and I send them everything every month that they should be reviewing it because it's their trust account, it's their clients' money that they're holding.
Mhm.
And the bar doesn't want to hear ignorance that, oh, I thought somebody else was doing it the way they were supposed to. So even if they are doing things the right way, but they don't really know what they're looking at, I think the best thing they can do is educate themselves, so they know.
So that so what on a day-to-day basis or a month to month, oh, I'm having problems. I need more coffee today. What does a healthy trust account practice look like? Like in the ideal world that's fairly stress-free, what does this look like?
So all of your transactions should be recorded as they happen. You shouldn't be waiting and going back and recording transactions, whether it's on paper or it's in QuickBooks or however you're doing it. It
Mhm.
shouldn't be done at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter. You should be recording transactions as they happen. And then you need to reconcile every month. The states require it to be done monthly. Some people say, oh, I do it at the end of every year. That's not okay. And so making sure that you have a good system in place where all of the transactions are being recorded. Client ledgers are very important. Attorneys don't always realize that they have to keep not only like a general checkbook of everything going in and out of the trust, but they also need to keep an individual
Yep.
checkbook, if you will, for each client. And so if you're recording the transactions as they happen, you're not going to forget them. If you do them every week, every couple weeks, you're often going to forget transactions, and it's going to make it that much harder to reconcile at the end of the month. If you have
Yeah.
a good system in place, it's not difficult and it's not time consuming.
Yeah, it's getting the system in place. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I battle with law firms and
Yes.
organizations all the time. Is like you have to take the time to set up the system, and
Yes.
then it becomes stress-free. But the stressful part is getting the setup done or ignoring it. So
And even just getting efficiencies in place. Sometimes I'll see attorneys that are doing things and the way they're doing it, they're making it a lot harder than it needs to be.
yeah,
Sometimes I'll work with their CPA or their bookkeeper or their office manager, whoever's helping them to put better systems in place because some people are very, they feel like it's a bigger problem than what it really is.
yep,
And so sometimes they just need to like be able to look at it a different way or have somebody show them like, this is, if you do this, you're okay, you're in compliance. Or,
yeah.
here's the areas where you're lacking. So I know it's a scary topic for a lot of attorneys and they feel like they're not, it's a little overwhelming, but it really isn't if you're doing it the right way.
Well, I mean, and attorneys are, we famously tell people ask advice from people who are experts and take our advice. We want people to do that. But then we are the worst DIY people out there these days trying
Yes.
to, I'm smart. I can do this on my own. I don't need any, like, I should figure this out. When every attorney you talk to will say, well, I went to law school because I didn't want to do math. Well, accounting is a lot of math.
Yes. Yeah. And right. And everybody should stay in their lane. You do what you're good at and you let other people, you outsource what you don't have time for, what you're not good at.
Yeah.
Especially attorneys that leave big firm. People will leave big firm and go out on their own, and they've
Yes.
never been responsible for maintaining their trust accounts. They've never been responsible for managing employees. And then they go out on their own, and if they don't start with a concrete foundation and they start with quicksand, it's going to continue to build. And so, I see that a lot. People go out on their own and they're 2 or 3 years in and they're like, I just never knew this is what I needed to do. And.
Yeah. It's funny because I see that a lot too, where lawyers went on their own. They either didn't like the big firm or you can usually make more money on your own if you're setting it up right.
Mhm.
And they just jump in, they get a checklist of where should I open my bank accounts at? Where should I get insurance at? But then they don't work on the systems or the actual design of their firm. I'm a big believer in design and systems as part of that. And I see that a lot where
Mhm.
2 or 3 years in, they're like stressed out, total chaos, because not only is accounting a disaster, but HR or client headaches because they don't have good systems. So, yeah, it seems like it's a really common problem though with lawyers. Almost a
It
lot.
is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And again, I think it's something that people just think that they know what they're supposed to do and they just don't spend the time to make sure that that they're doing things the way they're supposed to. I would say most attorneys are trying very hard to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. And I think that's the
And
problem too, is like we're all trying hard and we're not trying to do anything that's nefarious.
mhm.
And it comes down to like dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
Yes.
And that's where we fall short. So,
And I feel like that's like a very big peace of mind for attorneys, like in that practice, right? You went to law school, you work very hard to get a law degree, you're building this business. Knowing that your trust account is in compliance and that you don't have to worry about those things, I feel like is a very big stress reliever for attorneys.
yes. And so, and I get that a lot too, because a lot of the attorneys I work with are either neurodivergent, ADHD of some sort, and it's even a harder process. Money tends to be a hard thing for those of us that have those. And we put it off and we procrastinate and we don't want to deal with it because that's just like our brain telling us that we have to do that. And I find that this idea of proactive, it solves the problem of not being stressed, but then it's something that we're not able to take that first step.
Yes.
Um, if someone does want to be proactive, are you as an accountant who's helping them with that? Are you required to report anything anywhere? Like if you're helping them fix all of their things and you find something that was misappropriated, do you have any requirements from your ethics?
No, no, I don't. And
Okay.
usually I will work with them because I do get calls from attorneys a lot
Yeah.
that will say, I found this or this happened
Yeah.
and I want to self-report and what's the best way to do that? Or
Yeah.
I don't have a requirement to do that, but
Okay.
because of my background and because I worked on the other side for so long, I try very hard to make sure that attorneys are in compliance and that they do the right thing and really educating them so that it doesn't happen again down the road.
Right.
Right? If something happened, there's a reason it happened and there's systems to put in place to prevent it from happening again. And so I try very hard to help them understand what that is.
That's good. Yeah. I was just curious because I think that could be like a stumbling block to calling someone proactively is like, wait, if she finds something, is she going to report me to the bar then? And
Yeah, no.
yeah, trying to keep track of accounting ethics is not my experience level. So there's always just so many things you're like, well, who's going to find out about this? And I think that's also the shame factor too. Sometimes people are embarrassed.
There's
Yeah.
lots of attorneys are embarrassed, but to be honest, the things that I see frequently.
Yep.
And people call and they think they're the only attorney that's ever had these issues. I mean, I've seen theft over the years where, staff was stealing from the attorney and they never knew, or they've had shortages and didn't realize it. Lots of times I get involved and I find attorneys a lot of money that is theirs that's been sitting in there. I recently, found an attorney over $100,000 that he had no idea was sitting in his trust account. Those were his earned
That
fees.
was
So
earned. Yeah.
it's not always a bad thing, and sometimes when practices have been around for a long time, you have partners that retire and there's some money sitting in there and then they just become your problem. And then, you fast forward 20 years and, you're not really worried about those cases because they weren't yours, but, now
Mm-hmm.
it's your practice and you have to deal with, kind of what was left behind.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, we're getting the things cleaned up and, then other attorneys are getting ready to retire.
Yep.
And they know that they've got this money in here and eventually they're going to have to deal with it before they close out their account.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of benefit really to take the bad with the good. Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of good too that comes with cleaning up your accounts.
Well, and I think that's also an important point too. Like I do have several attorneys I've talked to, and they feel like they can't retire or they can't move on because they have this mess, so they're putting it off. And so that now that you
Yes.
say that and
I promise it's not as painful as it looks to get it fixed.
and it's not as painful. And when you get done with it, it's one of those things where you have like a 5-minute task that you've been putting off for 6 months, and then when you finally do it, you're like, why did I wait 6 months
Yes.
or 20 years to do this type of thing? So when lawyers aren't alone with these many problems that are out there. You've pretty much seen everything. I'm always amazed by the news stories and things you see, and I'm sure we don't hear about all of them, of embezzlement. or where a staff member has somehow accessed things. Have you had many of those situations? Do you see that? Is it more
Few
common?
over my years. Yeah, quite
Yeah,
a few of my years as an auditor. We see those kind of things. I wouldn't say frequently, but
right.
certainly, we've had staff who was taking money who destroyed records to hide, things, thinking if there's no paper trail, nobody's going to know that they took money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are some bad apples out there that,
Hmm.
misappropriate funds. I would say once you do what I did for a long time, usually pretty quickly I could tell if somebody was just a bad record keeper and a
Yeah.
bad accountant, or if there was some kind of intentional, you know, misappropriation going on. There's people that have gotten themselves in trouble with addiction, whether it's gambling or drugs, and
Yep.
they're taking money or financially, and they're trying to put their kids through college or pay their mortgage. So there's lots of reasons that
Yeah.
there's
Well,
the
and there's a lot of
misappropriation.
like even lawyers who maybe take money from the trust account that they shouldn't take. That was always one of my first questions as a bankruptcy attorney when I would have a lawyer come in and it's like, how is your trust account? Like, it, is it up to date? Is everything current? Because occasionally I would get one that would say, oh, I have some problems and I need because I needed money and that's what I did. Um, so yes, filing bankruptcy isn't anything that would um, automatically signal that, but it was just one of those
No,
things where you would ask,
yeah.
hey, people are stressed about something. They often do things they wouldn't normally do. So,
And even attorneys that I'm starting to find the last few years is I've gotten involved in some attorneys that are merging, doing a merger or acquisition.
yep,
If you're buying or merging with a law firm or you're taking on, you want to also make sure that whoever's firm you're merging with or whatever firm you're buying, that their trust account's fairly clean because
yep,
you're kind of accepting responsibility for that money that's in there. And sometimes attorneys don't think about that when they're merging. Like a lot of times I'll see family law practices will merge
yep,
and you're taking two separate firms, but you're becoming responsible for that money that's in there. And if you don't know for sure that that money is, that the accounts are reconciled and things like that, you're taking a pretty big risk. So I always make that recommendation too, to kind of maybe have an internal audit on of that firm's trust account, just to make sure you know what you're getting into before you put it into your own trust account.
I mean, I think that's a good recommendation anyway for anyone who's merging because the financial side of it is often the most hidden side. People don't always see all of the finances. And especially small firm mergers, I find a lot of lawyers get to situations where they're now partnered or they've taken over a firm and they didn't do the due diligence they should have
Yeah.
done.
And they're more thinking of the business side and the
Yep.
profits and the revenue and those kind of things and profit sharing, but they're not really thinking about the trust account. They just assume that that money's good and, things are recorded right. And so
Yeah, interesting. So if there is like one thing that you want lawyers to take away after this conversation, what do you want them to be thinking about with their trust account?
I would say that being proactive is the best thing that you can do. Being proactive for yourself, just making sure that you understand what's going on, making sure that you know what records are required for your state. They're pretty standard across most states, what you're required to have.
Yep.
And really just making sure that you have what you need and that you are doing it the right way. And if you're not, and you're not in compliance or you need some help, to reach out and just be proactive, because if you wait for the shoe to fall, and you get that letter or you have an overdraft in your account or something happens, it will cause a lot of stress. It will cause a lot of time and money. You'll have to hire ethics counsels sometimes, and it's just a very stressful process. And the courts don't give you a long time to provide your records because you're supposed to be maintaining them. So
Yes.
you can't get a 6-month extension to have somebody like me come in and fix it, or, you fix it yourself nights and weekends. And so I think that really just being proactive is the best thing that you can do.
I agree. For most things in life, that's usually the best thing to do.
Yes, yes.
Easier said than
Sometimes
done
easier said than
sometimes.
done, but yeah.
Tiffany, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you? How do they connect with you?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, Tiffany Keefer. My email is tiffany@hsbusinesspartners.com. We have our website, hsbusinesspartners.com. We have our website. But yeah, you can email me. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn. And our website has my direct line. And, I love to educate attorneys. This has been my specialty and my niche. With people being in all different states, the basics are the same. But I do get involved in state specific things to help people if they have specific issues. But I'm always happy to give some guidance or just talk to attorneys or to anybody that's involved with the law firm just to make sure that they're doing the right thing, because education is the best thing I think you can do.
And you do a lot of CLE speaking as well, right?
I do.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So
Yes.
if anyone's looking for a CLE speaker, I saw Tiffany present previously, so definitely reach out to her.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, to wrap up our Rebel Roundtable on Fridays, we do have a Rebel Roundtable anthems list on Spotify. And so what's the song that you play when you want to pump yourself up?
Mine is Girl on Fire by Alicia Keys.
There you go. We need to be on fire. And being proactively on fire would be great. I will get that added to our Spotify playlist. So anyone who needs to get pumped up on Friday mornings, that's where I can send them to. But thank you so much for talking about trust account nightmares and also, ways to proactively not have a nightmare. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And I will not be live next Friday because it is the Friday after Thanksgiving and I fully expect to be in a turkey coma. But I will see everybody on the 5th for the next Rebel